Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with Arcadia Economics. Well, hello there, my friends. I'll say it again. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Sorry we're a little late getting started on the live stream today. I'm still figuring out how to get Zoom and YouTube to play nicely together. So unfortunately, does not look like I will have my screen share here. But in either case, today is all about answering any questions that you have. Obviously, a wild day in the financial markets. Last night, the Federal Reserve did indeed finally launch quantitative easing. And so far, the reaction in the markets is quite surprising. Stock market, apologize if you can't see this. I'll get that part figured out one of these days, but the stock market was down about 10%. Let's take a look at where it is now. Dow plunges 9% even after emergency rate cut. Trading briefly halted after the open. And what is interesting to me is that we've really had some unprecedented reserve action in these last couple of days. And so far, it looks like it hasn't really made much of a difference to the market so far, which, again, on Thursday, the Federal Reserve launched $1.5 trillion stimulus package. By Friday morning, they already had to accelerate the rate at which they were buying treasuries. And apparently that didn't work because on Sunday night, we got the announcement of $700 billion of QE and another big interest rate cut. David Uhas, welcome to the live stream. What is our code word so we can identify ourselves as fellow prepares? I'm going to guess that maybe he means preppers there. I don't know what the code word is, but certainly today, an interesting day as we hear more about quarantines and other things going on with the coronavirus. For what it's worth, I actually did go to the supermarket today here in Denver. Things look normal. No one going nuts or, pummeling each other for that last loaf of bread. Things actually seemed well stocked. Hello, Dino. Welcome. Good to have you here. Ryan Hill and Carl Partridge. Yes, Ryan, maybe John Galt will be stopping by later today. And by all means, fire any questions that you guys have in there. We'll be doing this for about a half hour, and then I will be joining Phil Kennedy on his roundtable at the top of the hour. But again, the point of this is not so much just for me to continue talking about what's happening in the market, but actually answer some of the questions that you may have on your minds today. So send those on in the live chat window. And while you're formulating some great questions, again, sorry I don't have the screen share going here yet. Dow plunges 9% after emergency Fed cut. What I found interesting, and I'm imagining a lot of other people found interesting, was the reactions in the gold and silver market, where silver down almost $2, currently at about $12.90. Gold also taking it on the chin today, down $44, almost 3%. And something that was interesting is that both the metals actually spiked on the open last night. We saw gold went from closed at 1529, was up close to 1580, again following the largest quantity, which unfortunately we've grown more familiar with and more accustomed to in recent years. Again, I know people probably don't want to hear that the metals got smoked in the middle of the night with a large block offer. That does appear to be what's happened. Is there some selling? I would imagine in GLD and SLV there's a fair amount of selling. Certainly margin calls going on, which I guess I've never really done myself. Traded on margin, so maybe I don't think about it, although continue to hear people being affected by that. So that could have an impact in what is going on as well. But in either case, gold down, currently about $44 at $14.85 per ounce. Amazing to think that just last week, gold was up at crossed over 1,700. I believe that was last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now. Yet in the face of massive amounts of quantitative easing, the prices of both metals are down. All right, we got some questions coming in. That's great to hear. Ian asked, what is the source between firm inequality? Ian, perhaps you could be a little more specific. I'm not quite sure. I think I have a guess of what you're getting at, but if you could rephrase that, would be happy to answer. Brent Gray, spot silver down, yet silver miners up and premiums on bullion at 50%. Yeah, that was an interesting one. As I've been reporting on my channel for the last couple of days, all the bullion dealers basically running out of metal. U.S. Mint has gone offline, at least in terms of silver. Miles Franklin, who I'm friends with Andy Sheckman, who owns Miles Franklin, he mentioned how they've been selling a lot of silver and premiums. He was seeing premiums increase on silver maple leafs and eagles. I believe as of last night I checked in with him, they do still have some silver left, yet JM Bullion reporting delays, Bullion Star in Singapore reporting the same thing. And interesting that you did have silver down about 10%, and many of the silver miners are up 10%. So go figure that one. Pina asks, what will get metals going if Fed launching QE and cutting rates to zero doesn't push metals up? Very fair and good question, because if what we saw this past week wasn't enough to break the paper pricing on the COMEX, you start to wonder what is, although my hope, and maybe it is a hope at this point, I don't know, but seeing the way that people are buying a lot of physical metal and in the face of quarantine or whatever is the next step for what's going on with Corona. So that would be perhaps the best hope of something happening here. I also personally wonder if this is just complete speculation. We won't call this fact by any means yet. If someone was planning a currency reset, you think that some of the things we've seen in the last couple of weeks might be how it would go down. So we shall see. Physical going for 40% premium. Not surprised to hear that. Was interesting in 2008 when silver went offline back then, fell from $21 to $9. When the U.S. Mint actually came back online, they were offering an ounce of silver to the dealers for $18, so about 100% premium back then, at a time when supposedly the silver was some asset that no one wanted. So similar to now. And I guess we'll just see. Keep in mind, after it went down to $9, it did then go to $50. Took a couple of years. Hopefully we won't have to wait that long. And I'm sure curious if we see something else that we're not being told about in the next week or two. But Pina, I think 90% is banker manipulation using margin calls as a cover to hide their evil activities. I would certainly very much agree with that. Latro Genowile, howdy from Texas. Good to see you down there. Your thoughts on First Majestic stock? Thank you. Actually, a big fan of First Majestic. And I mean, I guess First Majestic I look at as a levered bet on the price of silver. So normally on a day where you see the silver price down quite a bit, you would expect to see First Majestic, absent any news, down quite a bit as well. So certainly interesting to see again how the miners are up quite a bit today. And I would say First Majestic, if you do see silver prices rising higher, would be a great stock to be looking into. And if you contact me through the site, I'd actually be happy to put you in touch with some of the folks over at First Majestic if you do have any questions. Helpful guys. And I do like the stock. Again, I cannot give licensed financial advice, but that's just my opinion. How much was the most costly repo rate? I'm not sure the answer to that. Bix Weir does a lot of coverage on his Road to Rooted channel that might dig into that. What do you think Phil asks, what do you think this whole 2x trillion going to do to the US dollar? In the short term, probably nothing. I mean, it's amazing we see this happening. Let's see what the dollar index is doing today. Because on one hand, I mean, the Fed is making an absolute mockery of the dollar and everything associated with it, yet we see these periods where they say the flight to quality or the safe haven, of which certainly that's happening now. Sorry, I'm pulling up the chart in the background here. It is interesting the way that the treasuries have rallied. So it looks like dollar index down a 0.71 cents. So a little less than 1% today when the Federal Reserve just printed or made the decision to print $700 billion last night. So on a short-term basis, it's kind of counterintuitive. We're balancing that against the fact that the world does look at the dollar as the reserve currency, flight to safety. Interesting, people are flocking into treasuries. While we're having treasury disruptions, we've heard about the bid-ask spread widening. And of course, the fact that the U.S. being the most indebted entity in the history of finance, so that people are flocking into the Treasury as a safe haven. If you want to say that other people are going to flock into the Treasury during times of crisis, even if the crisis is in the dollar or the Treasury market, I wouldn't disagree because I think the conditioning is that strong. Yet in the end, I mean, if dollars are being printed, then Treasury, even a promise to pay dollars, so even riskier than the dollar, and yet it is rallying. So what do you think the whole $2 trillion will do to the U.S. dollar? I wonder if a couple decades from now, we'll look back at these past couple weeks as a turning point. Because again, it's just that's a scary precedent when you throw in $1.5 trillion, accelerate treasuries, and then do QE, and none of that works. What is the plan next? Try $2 trillion tomorrow, $5 trillion on Thursday. So we shall see. Anthony writes 120-to-1 ratio. I'm assuming that's, is that what the gold to silver ratio is up to today? Is stunning. Paired trade, long the miners, short the metal. Well, if you had that trade on today, you certainly would have done pretty well. One thought that I've heard from a conversation with someone who's part of a mining company, I obviously feel that the price of the metals is determined by what the paper trading on the COMEX does, which theoretically you would think gold up or down, and a gold miner would be up or down. Now, do we live in a world where the miners are manipulated as well? I would have to guess so. And I spoke with someone who felt that the mining stocks actually drive the bullion price, which is a bit counterintuitive logically or just naturally thinking about it. Yet, could that be the way things are run? Maybe worth looking into. I actually have someone who's back testing the data on that. So we shall see. Again, I would say one of the things with precious metals investing, whether you call it the banks, the government, some combination of the two, I do think there are folks who are actively, maybe not watching this podcast, but that think of what makes sense and how could we gain people and rip them off in response to that. So whatever you're thinking is logical. Is it possible that the banks are gaming that to stick it in at any opportunity? I couldn't necessarily prove that, but I'd be willing to bet an ounce of silver on it. So Uncle T, could you get Charles Nenner on your show? You will be impressed. Actually listened to an interview with him the other day, but I will make a note and reach out and see if Charles would like to join us sometime. What's in a name? Spot price will soon mean what you can buy precious metals for at whatever spot you happen to be standing in. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see whatever price that ends up being. Again, I don't want to be fear-mongering or anything in that even remote area yet. It is interesting that bullion dealers and supply chains are drying up quickly, so will be interesting. And if anyone from the Department of Justice is on the call today, if you could explain how silver is dropping $2 while the metal is running out of supply at the mint and there's record demand, maybe not record demand, but strong demand, sure is baffling to imagine what they're doing in that investigation. So what do you know about NESARA? That sounds like something I've heard of recently, but not much. That's supposed to be the reset. Well, with the reset, we've heard about that for years. I've never come across anything that I could call substantial. There is a reset coming, or this is how it's going to go down, or this is when it's going to go down. Yet when I think intuitively about some of the things that are happening, yeah, you would have to imagine if something like that was coming, this is the kind of conditions in which you might have it. Does concern me of how quickly money is just flying out of the Fed and Wall Street, or rather Washington more so. So I will make a note to look at NESARA and see what that's all about. What's in a name? Spots price will soon mean. Okay, we have covered that one. How long? There we go. How long do you think silver will go before it goes back up? Move back up soon. Please wait while we try reconnecting. Is anybody still out there? Hopefully you can hear me. Oh, looks like we're back now. So how long? Again, I would say to keep things simple. Hey, phrase it. If you take silver and you just leave it there at some place. Connection is unstable. Please wait while we, there we go again. So whether there's a break in the market, if we had a short squeeze tomorrow, wouldn't be surprised. If we had a reset tomorrow, wouldn't be surprised. So I just kind of continue to think about how to frame things mentally so that you're not trading in and out of things and getting yourself in trouble. Hopefully it will be sooner than later, but we shall see. Uncle T, I bought AG at 11, sold in the panic at 6 last week, plan to get back in if it goes below 4.5. And I guess that's really it, where, on some level with silver, I mean, I guess I formed my own personal conclusions a couple of years ago, and that's why, yeah, if you're holding a bunch of silver mining stocks, then certainly, yes, there's that part of us that wants to see our trade pay off. But I find when, again, my background was equity options trading, and then through the show and the channel, I've talked to just about everyone outside of Santa Claus trying to figure out if there is any way to game the silver pricing and manipulation. And while I'm not saying it's impossible, not easy to do. So again, by all means, if you can successfully trade these markets, then go for it. Just I hope you don't get yourself into too much trouble. Why is gold falling? I would say a combination of margin calls, selling GLD, and some large paper offers that were placed into the markets last night. In terms of any logical fundamental reasons, doesn't really make that much sense, as you just had the Fed blow the doors off of money printing. And again, all the physical data and order flow information I've seen is people buying a lot of metals. Latro had to flush AG. Well, hopefully at least caught the rally today. Scott, welcome. Hope you're good down there in Dallas today. Sean, some online sites are taking longer to fill orders. They must be up on orders. I can imagine it's quite a racket in any trading floor or online trading operation today. Is interesting to see in the option markets, the bid-ask spreads have widened considerably, which is customary for when you have chaos in the markets. 8-point buck, helicopters are everywhere. Yes, Bernanke must be out flying today. Stunning. He probably wasn't kidding. MTA Metalla is having a nice bounce today, which is good to hear. A lot of the miners up. Oh, and there is a comment from my friend Tony Cardoza. Great comment, Tony. This is just what Germany did in 1923. The Fed is now the biggest property owner in the world. And funny, maybe not funny, but interesting you mentioned that, because I've been wondering in the last couple of weeks, I'm not trying to be a smartass, but actually, if we actually knew how many dollars were out there and how much gold was out there, I wonder if the numbers, even before last week, were already more extreme than what was witnessed in Weimar Germany. Again, we see stories about the Pentagon with undocumented adjustments of 30 or 35 trillion. So added on to everything else. So yes, Tony, it's a good comment. Mnuchin can put any number he wants with his mouse. Plunge protection team from D. Tyler. Sounds like he's been watching my friend Bix Weir. And I would agree with that at this point. I'll mention part of why I left the trading floor in 2012 was once I was getting into this and seeing the gold and silver manipulation, it was almost like, geez, if things are this rigged, what's the point of sitting on a trading floor? And I'll say in the 8 years since then, I've only been more blown away by how rigged and manipulated things are. Again, with gold and silver getting pummeled on the news of a massive quantitative easing package being just the latest sign. So I can certainly understand that. Tony mentions the money printing is out of control. Very true. No bailout for the citizens. That's a good point. I just saw a headline. The airlines want $50 billion from the government. It seems like they're writing a lot of checks already, or getting ready to write a lot of checks, especially in an election year. I can't even imagine how that will come out. And I think that's a very good point. Where's the bailout for the citizens, where with all this quantitative easing money, how much, if any of that, actually helps the people in need, where it goes to the banks that they're supposed to lend out, yet they usually end up buying treasuries, getting those levered up. So I think this is quite unfortunate, which is one of the reasons why I'm careful how I say this, but there's some ways in which I do wish for this racket of a system to be toppled, so at least we can rebuild something more honest and with integrity, where I think there are a lot of people out there already struggling quite a bit. And I'll just phrase it like that. I think it's quite unfortunate. And here it is, a lot of money going to a lot of the banks that have caused these problems. So what are you expecting for this week? A lot of volatility. I'm not sure what I'm expecting this week. Probably more money printing. It'll be interesting to see what happens from the Fed on Wednesday. Now rates are already at 0. Do they add something on even just 3 days later? We will see. And of course, again, we've talked about the financials of all this today, but letting alone, I mean, it'd be one thing if you had all these actions and there was like something you could point to. I mean, if we were coming out of a war, and you could say, well, they announced peace today, so now we can go back to building productive goods rather than, blowing things up with printed money. Yet we're just getting started, it appears, with the whole Corona thing. We hear martial law, quarantines, and by no means am I an expert on what is going to happen there, but it doesn't seem like there's any easy resolution in sight. Remember, this was all planned a long time ago. Yeah, that's an interesting comment, because I do believe that there is something that feels very orchestrated about everything that has been happening recently. So again, that's why when someone asks, could gold go up, or go back, gold or silver go back up quickly? If you told me that there was a reset plan for next Sunday or sometime in the near future, certainly that would seem quite plausible. Again, to be clear, I'm not saying I have any information that's going down. But again, you would think this is the kind of environment that would happen in. No video or audio. I hope you guys can hear me out there or see me. Hopefully I haven't just been talking to myself for the last 27 minutes, but hi, Chris. Well, hello, driver. Chris, I'm waiting for the bond bubble to burst. After that, nowhere else to go. Someone else, that was you again. When does the bond bubble burst? I wonder if we're seeing the beginning of that. Now, let's take a look at our current bond yield, which, what do we have here? US at 73 basis points. So at least on the face of it, the bond bubble has not burst, but when the Fed's launching trillion that here and there at a pop, and the markets don't even react. I mean, if anybody wants to bet an ounce of silver that the Fed is done, so I wonder if we're seeing, I think something significant happened in particular on Friday, maybe more than I'm feeling rather than could put into words. But certainly it will be fascinating to see. It gets so muddied because the Fed is buying the bonds. The Exchange Stabilization Fund is buying the bonds. We don't know what other central banks are printing money to buy the bonds. So I think in some sense it may have already burst, yet kind of the same with the stock market. You could, we've always talked about how, if the stock market's going down, well, you could double the money supply today and the thing will go up. So far that hasn't happened, but really don't know how much money these guys plan to print, except a lot. And Justin, so maybe answered, but JP Morgan still reading the game. Any news on indictment? I wish I had more news from the Department of Justice. I wish they would comment on why silver and gold got hit so hard. Well, the physical supply is drying up. No announcements lately. For what it's worth, I am about to release a book called The Big Silver Short, which kind of ended up as the investigation I would have done had I been part of the CFTC, the Department of Justice. But so far, no answer from them. Let's see. Royal Mint in UK has run out of silver. Not surprised to hear that. Let's see. Hello from Western Venezuela, is that? 10-day delay on my last order. NESARA stands for National Economic Security and Recovery Act, Reformation Act, and refers to an act that was passed in 2000 by American Congress but was kept under wraps ever since. I would believe that. I guess when I said there's something about this reminds me of September 11th, just the way that Patriot Act was there and ready to be passed along, where now it's like it's a lot of things being run out in place very quickly. Don't be scared out of your metals, says Jim. I would agree with that. I know it's not an easy day today, but that's why I'm here. Give me your concerns and we'll try and cheer you up. What is your favorite crime? Interesting question from Ian. I like to stay, on the holistic, as if God is watching side and just report on some of the crimes I see taking place. So I'll pass on that one. Stocks rising on large volume, plunge protection team using up repo and QE money to pump up the markets. I certainly believe that's the case, Pina. It would be, wow, would it be fascinating to see what is actually being printed and done beneath the scenes that they're not telling us. Simple Mind Anarchist does not count his wealth or her wealth in dollars. They count it in ounces. And I think that's a great way to be. I think part of the reason why a lot of us do look to it in dollars is that, if you actually want to use the gold and silver to buy goods, right now it's going to cost you a lot more of gold and silver than if, things were repriced. But again, a good mindset to have. Children born in 2030 are paying for this abysmal corruption. Yes and no, maybe to be determined. I get what you're saying, and it was a big part of why I left Wall Street to do what I've done, because I think it's unfortunate how we talk about creating a great path for our children and grandchildren, then look at what we're leaving. Yet, I think this system, not what I'm rooting for, but it's insolvent, it's bankrupt, it's coming down. And I just hope that we can rebuild something more honest and easier for folks on the other side. Because if the Fed has printed away 99% of the dollar in the last 100 years, that means we're getting 1% of what we actually earn or contribute. I mean, if you even rolled that back to 90% and we got 10%, it'd be like adding a zero, let alone if you added 2 zeros. So hopefully by the time our children born in 2030, hopefully that's what we can do. That's what I like to think that I can be a part of, is spreading at least what I'm seeing, so that something more honest can be rebuilt. And certainly, as I talk quite a bit about gold and silver, and for anyone who watches that or is investing in gold and silver, felt that at least I could be here to answer any questions and explain anything I'm seeing. I know it's not a fun day if you're looking at your portfolio, and I'm right there with you. But anyway, next OTC report will be interesting. Maybe mostly long gold and silver. I bet you that the banks will have been doing a lot of buying on some of these days. Another thing that hopefully one day the CFTC or Department of Justice will comment on. Fortunately, before his passing, Bart Schulten laid it out pretty darn clearly in that interview, which is part of the big Silver Short book. Unfortunate the agencies do not have more to say. Everything in the world depends on what Trump does now. That is a scary thought. Let's hope not. We got these coming in too darn fast. Minor devastation is shocking. It makes sense. Crash everything in dollar terms, reset, and if you're not in position, you miss the move. Just joining 100-ounce silver bars. Gold, 170 over spot. Man, I honestly feel so bad for the silver holders. It easily could have been me, but I guess I got lucky and went into gold. Well, gold, they're both getting pounded today, and I'm convinced more than one bank has gone under since Thursday and is being covered up. Pat, I darn well agree with you there. I think there's something like that happened. I used to be overly analytical and think about everything until you crush the idea. These days, last couple of years, I've studied intuition and how to just feel what feels right. And there was something about Friday to me that feels like something Lehman-like happened on Friday that I don't think we've gotten the full story about. So if you're convinced more than one bank has gone under since Thursday and is being covered up, I would not dispute that. Let's see, Jim, I don't think there will be a reset. Why would they reset it when they can print on with infinite counterfeit easing? I get what you're saying, and you may end up well being right. I think there's some breaking point to this. There always has been in history. For folks who are tired and frustrated of the wait, I would say keep in mind that everything government does is contingent upon printed money. So at least, not that this is going to make you feel better, but if it helps to understand it, yeah, it's like there's going to be a lot of pressure to try and keep that going, change margin requirements, do things like to the Hunt brothers, everything possible. If you're running, imagine if you're running a crime family and you're about to be exposed. Well, you'll probably clear out, I don't want to say you, but folks who think like that often will clear away anything in their path. And again, Jim, as long as I'm on the planet, I'll keep doing what I can to spread awareness so that, geez, I mean, if you had some honest people running these investigations, you would think that could change things really quickly. And, you know, my best guess is just sharing information, sharing truth, one another goes farther than we know. What to do with cash in the bank? I don't want to get people alarmed, although at least worthwhile to think about getting some of that cash out of the bank. We hear the rumors of bank holidays. I cannot confirm or deny anything like that, but certainly a lot of things like that popping up. So, you know, and that's the whole thing with gold and silver and why it's always been of use, because you can have it out of the banking system. Again, not the easiest day for that today, but Tony, you can still buy in Frankfurt silver to go. Good to hear. Let's see. Spidey Sense telling me the corona is some kind of op on the world population. Jim, I'll tell you, you're hitting home with that one again. I've heard things on corona anywhere from, you know, it's no different from the flu, and 5,000 people have died, whereas 37,000 people die every year from the flu, to it's the ultimate killer. And I guess in either case, it still just seems to me like a lot of things were ready to go and be rolled out. And this is, you know, I guess the way you phrase it, some kind of op on the world population. Again, I try not to dig into conspiracies when not valid. I don't know how well I do on that, but yeah, something feels really off about it to me as well. Saving dollars, what about buying gold with money in the bank? I think especially, again, I cannot offer legal financial advice, but if someone made this will be fun. If someone makes a $1 million contribution to help keep Arcadia Economics funded, I would tell you that a large portion of that would be going into gold, silver, or mining stocks or related assets on those. You know, I've been saying that for 8 years and have been pretty much pounded most of that time. Did look good for a while in 2011, but again, that's the thing. Certainly, if you're already long and you're getting beaten up on paper today, you know, it's not fun yet when the price is low. Forget about all the emotion or gold and silver, but any asset. So need to bring politicians and banksters to account for their actions. Yeah, and I think that's shared by a lot of people. Would like to see people at least to speak for their actions. Orange Spy, who comments often on the channel, says, "Hey Chris." Hey Orange Spy. I don't know your actual name, but appreciate all the videos you watch and comments you leave. I see a whiplash coming in AG. I certainly could see that. And folks, we're going to have to wrap up in a couple of minutes here. Already a little longer than expected. Let's see how many more of these I can get through. Are we witnessing an economic transition taking place much like gold to petrodollars in the 70s? This is my guess, not fact, but I think something of these last couple of weeks, we are seeing something that will be looked back on like the Lehman crash. And I think there's a good chance that that is the case. 0% interest rate is all the proof you need. The paper is worthless. Agreed. Will U.S. nationalize mines? Or along those lines, reconfiscate gold? I wouldn't put anything past the U.S. government. I wonder how successful they would be if they tried. Because again, are we seeing people finally just say to the Fed, we don't care what you think anymore, or we'll just react, but the secret gets out that it's a scam? You know, we will see. What do you think about South African miners? Well, I'll give you one quick thing that someone passed along to me, that when the palladium price was up, they were running into security concerns because there are people showing up, groups of like 20 or 40 guys with guns. And so that's just what one viewer told me. Something to be careful about. All gold 1 ounce bars out of stock. Not surprised. Who cares about paper? Gold mine is a hole in the ground surrounded by liars. Stick to physical. I can certainly understand that, and I think a lot of miners do fit that description. Hopefully, I like to think there are some good ones. Katie Economics, check your miners portfolio. Wow, what a comeback. They are up today. More than one person is saying something big is supposed to happen tomorrow. I could believe that. Trump is going to move us out of the Federal Reserve note and into the Treasury note, shut down the Fed. I did have Bitcoin Ben on the show a couple of weeks ago who talked about something to that exact effect. So the idea that something is underway being transitioned and we could wake up to a new Amero dollar or something, yeah, I do get again, that's just my speculation, but it seems like there's something else going on. Paper always fails, I agree. White Dragons, Rothschilds will survive, return. Hope not, wouldn't be surprised. If it's not Corona, will be Coors. Yes, the Coors Light virus that has been affecting college students for decades and leading to severe cases of Keynesian economic ideology. Is there a stock market in the U.S.? Yes, not what I think most people believe. Mentioned before that, is it as simple as Steve Mnuchin clicks his mouse and it goes up or down? I do think it could be that extreme. That presumes you are not all in as it is, but I think SPX is bouncing here next couple of days. Will be retrace. I agree. Takes about an hour of research to find out the truth about Spanish flu and yellow outbreaks were not all how they were reported by history. And I imagine that's the case here as well. So many conflicting reports out there. Mark writes, investing in pharmaceutical catalyst coronavirus vaccine test opens with 1 doses. I'm not going to say to do or not do that, but interesting. If anybody else recently watched the movie Contagion, highly recommended. It was from 2011. I saw the trailer in January after Corona had started. I was like, wow, this is interesting. And then I watched it again a couple weeks ago, the trailer, and it was even more interesting. Then I watched the movie, and it's almost as if we're acting out the script from the movie. I do believe a lot of things are coded in movies. And that was one of the things, people were buying, the company that makes the vaccines. We hear about Bill Gates having a bunch of vaccines ready to go. So that was certainly something to think about. I get what you're saying, and I'll just leave it at that. What about buying land? I think at some point that'll be good, but probably is, maybe that'll be good to look into. I'll bet the real estate prices are coming down quite a bit right now. I would not be in any rush to do so. I think we're still early on in this. People sell metals to cover margin losses, then they rocket. I do believe there's some of that going on. Some miners up highly, some are getting crushed. Any ideas why the divergence? Good to hear from you, Bob. I'm not sure about that. I did see that, and I thought it was odd. I mentioned a bit earlier that sometimes it seems as if the miners actually drive the bullion price. And, to the degree that would we see a reversion in the bullion price, at least over the next couple of days? I mean, you'd think so, if only from the standpoint of how much farther can it go down. But why some are up and why some are down? I guess why are some even up would be even a more direct question. It's darn confusing, and I'm not sure. Yara Sophia Vinay, marketing director of Yara's of Arcadia, says thanks. Well, thank you, Yara. Graphene gold-backed coin. Anything is better than the dollar at this point. The video stops every 3 seconds. I am sorry about that. Try and get that cleared up next time. Please save this stream. Should be up on the page shortly. Contagion was preparing everyone. Land hasn't begun to crash yet. The world should sue China and make them pay for all the expenses associated. Bill Gates literally drooling at the mouth. Big mountaintop land. Thanks, Arcadia. Appreciate this channel very much. Well, I appreciate you, Kivo. Anyway, I am jumping on a roundtable with Phil Kennedy of Kennedy Financial in 3 minutes. So going to have to wrap this one up today. Hope this was helpful for people. Again, I wish I had the exact answer or could tell you what was exactly going to happen in the price of any of these assets or what's going to happen next week or reset. But unfortunately, I don't know the exact answers to those questions, but can share the best information I have and let you know when it's something I see as fact versus opinion or speculation, and at least do you the service of, the one thing that ever since I started the channel, which I know some people think I do this because I have a vested interest. I can promise you this has not been the most financially rewarding decision of my career, at least so far yet. Hopefully changing that. Yet the one thing I will always promise you is that whatever I say is with a genuine intention to give you the best answer, accurate information possible, which is what I did here today. And at least be here, obviously. Hopefully one day soon we have gold and silver soaring and we can all talk about how we're celebrating, but want to be here, especially with what's going on the days where it is down as well, to at least answer questions to the best of my ability. So that said, folks, going to have to wrap up, but come on over to Phil's live stream. I believe he'll be taking questions there too. And again, just hope you're all doing well out there, treating each other well. Remember, a lot of good people fighting together here, and let's pray for some good outcomes. And with that said, God bless all of you, and I'll talk to you again soon.